Hi, welcome back. We're talking about the quality of our measurements. This is Module 5B, and we're going to be talking about validity. Got through talking about reliability, and the second part of measuring the quality of our measurements is validity. So let's take a look. Here's the components of the research process that you've seen, and we are still talking about measurement. And then we're also going to get a little bit into quality of design. So, just like with reliability, we can get into trouble with the quality of our design and our measurements and our analysis. And that has to do with the validity of the design, the measurement, or the analysis. Other synonyms for the word validity, they can be used interchangeably, are words like appropriateness, so the appropriateness of a measure, meaningfulness, correctness, usefulness of the inferences, especially when we're talking about statistical validity. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about validity. What could go wrong? And there's several different validities that we're going to talk about, different kinds of validity. One is external validity. External validity is related to the sampling method. And we'll talk more about that in Module 8 when we talk about sampling. But essentially, external validity is to the what extent we can infer the results to the population. It is generalizability of the results from the sample to the population. And so those words go kind of hand in hand too. External validity, generalizability. It is about whether or not our results can be inferred outside of our study setting, outside of our research setting, from the sample to the population. One way to improve external validity is through the sampling method, through having a robust sampling method. And when we talk about statistical significance, we're talking about generalizability from the sample to the population. We'll be talking more about significance in Module 10. Let's go back to measurement. There are 4 kinds of measurement validity. So 4 ways, and they have a hierarchy, but 4 ways to look at the quality of our measures. The first is face validity, and that's, you might have heard of that before. That's the most basic level, and it's the extent to which the measures just feel right. And the word face validity comes from the phrase, does the measure seem like a reasonable representation on its face? Does the measure appear relevant to some innocent bystander? So we're also going to talk about content, criterion, and construct validity. Let's go back to face validity first. So the concept of face validity, as I mentioned, about does it seem like a reasonable representation on its face? What would an innocent bystander think about it? For instance, if you wanted to look at religiosity, you might be able to measure religiosity by asking your subjects, how often do you attend church? So you could measure it with church attendance. And you could say, okay, does that seem valid on its face? An innocent bystander might say, sure. But if you tried to measure religiosity with, let's say, political affiliation, the innocent bystander might say, that doesn't make sense to me. You might be harshly criticized trying to measure religiosity with political attitudes. So you could say, okay, the more religious tend to attend church more often. But if we said the more conservative people are more religious, you could be harshly criticized. Let's look at content validity. Content validity is, and I've heard validity explained this way just in general. Are we measuring what we think we're measuring? For instance, if you wanted to measure attitudes towards college, so college attitudes, would you ask somebody whether or not they get along with their parents? Well, that doesn't even have face validity, really. Are we measuring what we think we're measuring? That's content validity. Content validity is also about whether or not we are measuring the range of a concept. So let's say we have a math test and we're trying to measure mathematical ability. And that's going to be dependent upon who our sample is. Are we looking at elementary students? Are we looking at high schoolers? Are we looking at college students? Are we looking at graduate students in statistics courses? We want to know about mathematical ability. You would get criticized on content validity if your test only covered addition and subtraction. A mathematical test should probably also cover multiplication and division. So how well does the measure cover the range of meanings included in the concept? One way that we determine whether or not we have content validity is whether or not experts believe we do. Where we can actually measure the accuracy of reliability, validity, face validity, content validity, and even the two other validities, construct and criterion, are more judgment-oriented, and that's why it's harder to prove validity. An example of using experts to judge is having a group of faculty develop a critical thinking rubric. And you could say that that device, that measuring device, the rubric, has content validity because a group of faculty that teach critical thinking devised it. The next type of validity is criterion validity. With criterion validity, we're looking at how two measures are correlated. So we're correlating a measure with another measure, and that other measure is called the criterion. And these two independent instruments are meant to measure the same thing. And so this is one that you can actually test with statistics. This ends this part of the module's presentation. Please move on to review the next part